and WNST.net. I'll tell you what, this time last year we were parading the Stanley Cup around, right? We were getting ready for a nice summer around here, and you have Oriole baseball and Manny Machado trades and all-star games in Washington. Dennis Koulatsos, I don't know, man. The next couple of weeks here, you're not putting together this Hall of Fame month. Every single conversation on the air in the month of July, WNST will be with a Hall of Famer. And so I'm putting this together for our 21st anniversary. But, man, watching the Orioles get swept away this weekend, now we got the NBA over. 3 out of the 4 golf majors are done, right? Stanley Cup's done, and congratulations to the St. Louis Blues. We're going into this period where between now and, like, training camp, we got Messina going in the Hall of Fame, Ed Reed going in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
But, boy, it's quiet other than 0% interest over in your place, right?
Yeah, just a lot of quietness in the off season here. We just had the U.S. Open that we witnessed, the U.S. Women's National Soccer Team, but some huge NBA trade. Anthony Davis to the Lakers. The Lake Show is coming back in the big way with LeBron.
By the way, here we go. Lakers are good again, right?
You know what? I've been a Laker fan. Pete Lewis has been a Laker fan for many, many years now, and I wish LeBron wasn't on that team. But look, the Lakers are relevant. They're very an iconic NBA franchise, and that's good for business to see the Lakers back on prime time and making some noise. And
some Knicks fans would say it would be good for.
yeah, with the devastating injuries to Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson, Golden State Warriors not looking so good for next season.
It was a limp final, wasn't it? Like in that way where one team's playing with 2 arms tied behind its back. I mean, I'm a Warriors guy, you know that. So I wanted them to win. I like Steve Kerr. Hey, look, in the balance of things that Canada won and Toronto won, and I'm okay with it. But as a fundamental thing, I would have rather have seen the Raptors win it outright and win it full speed and win it in 7. Win it honorably as opposed to, I don't like to see beaten up teams lose at the finish line like that. I want to see best versus best in June,
Yeah. When is the last time we've seen something like this, Nestor, where 2 superstars in Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson go down in the playoffs in the fashion that they did? Klay Thompson goes down with about 7 minutes left in game number 6, which all but sealed their fate. And to watch Kawhi Leonard and the Raptors hoist that O'Brien Trophy sky high, they would have rather won it with those guys in the full strength. But it was a very bizarre final and riddled with injuries that we haven't seen. I've never seen anything like it before in my lifetime.
But I also like the Toronto one, because let me tell you this: how many times in an NBA season do you go into it and say, well, there's 2 teams that can win? And that's been going on most of my lifetime, right? Or you at least say there's 20 teams that absolutely can't win. There's a feeling like the Atlanta Hawks, the Washington Wizards, the Toronto Raptors. These teams, they're incapable of winning. You know what I mean? Like that they'll never win. The Portland Trail. Some of these teams that feel like they can never get there. It's nice to see something weird happen and let Toronto win, right? I mean, that is out of character for the NBA and the NFL to some degree, where the same teams seemingly win every year.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And you travel a lot. You are a world traveler. As time condenses, as airplanes get faster, the world continues to shrink. How long before there's NBA franchise in Paris or Barcelona? We know the Jaguars owner in NFL. He's trying to move the Jaguars over there to Wembley Stadium, and I look forward to that. It'd be great to truly have a world champion, and just like we get geeked up about the World Cup, it'd be very nice to have that in the NHL, the NFL. And the NBA.
Well, the NBA was the national basketball. What happens when the team that's not from this nation wins? It's more the international, the INBA. I'm not sure, but
it's the world championship right there, right? I mean, right now the Toronto Raptors, for all intents, at least they're North America champions. At worst, right?
Dennis Koulatsos joining us here over Coons Florida Security Boulevard. Of course, get on our text service. You'll get all the breaking news. Let's move on to the Ravens here for just a minute, because I know we had camp last week. We had a nice time out there. We've got a mainly healthy group. We'll get Hollywood on the field, and it really is amazing, Dennis. Have you stood next to Hollywood yet? Have you been in a room with him yet?
I have not, but I know he's not real big. I know he's a slight build. Am I correct?
Well, I mean, I've been a guy that's for years has advertised that big things come in small packages, right? So I'm not one at $148 to talk about one size or height or whatever. But certainly in the National Football League, when you stand next to a guy, and I would say this about Jermaine Lewis. I would say this about with Abney, the little guy they drafted from Kentucky a million years ago. There have been some smaller cats. Who was the little guy that returned kicks that they drafted maybe a turn of the century?
Yamon Figures.
Yamon Figures. Thank you so much. I saw his face.
He was very, very fast.
He was
He's one of the greatest names of all time. You can't forget Yamon Figures. I mean, that's a phenomenal name. And when
Muggsy Bogues, right? I mean, we've had Muggsy. Speaking of Hall of Famers, so there are small guys, but when you look at him, your first inclination. And I said to Jeff Zrebeck last week, I'm like, that means he's going to the Hall of Fame, right? Because we've completely underestimated him.
Well, you know what, Deshaun Jackson, they're built similarly, and he's had a very, very good career. And if there's anything that like Deshaun is, he'll certainly give the Ravens that deep threat that they've been lacking. And he has good hands, 10 touchdowns last year with Oklahoma. So, you know what, the guy can make some noise, and this team will be dramatically different when they kick it off in September. It looks like, from all accounts, he's progressing nicely, and he may be ready in 5 weeks when training camp kicks off for real when they put pads on. So very excited to see him, and as well all the players from last year, Hayden Hurst and Mark Andrews, and those guys are a year bigger, stronger, faster, smarter. Just can't wait to see what this edition of the 2019 Ravens looks like. They're very much under the radar, Nestor, right now. All the love goes to Cleveland. The Oakland Raiders, I mean, they're going to be on Hard Knocks. That should be very entertaining with that cast of characters, whether you're talking about Brenton Perfect or Antonio Brown. I mean, they've got Rich Incognito, and don't be surprised if we see Marshawn Lynch in that team before it's all said and done.
We were sitting over Costas having a crab cake, and they play those video games and whatnot, and there was a question about the Goonies and the movie and who played, what football player, and I'm like, John Matuzak. And my wife's like, John Matuzak.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, man, you look up the twos, and they're bringing back the circus out there, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Absolutely are.
Oakland Raiders on Hard Knocks. How many Al Davis throwbacks are we going to get there, and Thousand Oaks and all that stuff, right?
And their strength and conditioning coaches, get this, it's Deuce Gruden. It's John Gruden the second. They call him the Deuce. He's jacked. I think he won a powerlifting competition a year ago, and it should be just phenomenal television. Now no team that's ever appeared on Hard Knocks has ever won a Super Bowl. I don't think they're going to break that string either. I think they're not going to do very well this year, but they're going to definitely be fun to watch.
We've come a long way from Jack Del Rio having me into the players' room and speaking on Jen Strong and Give a Spit, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. Jack is a good man. I know he's a good friend of yours.
Dennis, baseball. They played it here all week last week. I'm going to the game next week. The Padres are coming to town. I'm going to throw my brown and mustard Tony Gwynn jersey on, take my wife out. That'll be the one time I go this year. Freddie Ullman, my dear buddy, who was one of the guys that runs the Padres and has for 3 decades. I'm going to go, and it's going to be my night at the ballpark and whatnot. I was in New York last week, had a chance to go to a Yankees-Red Sox game. I'm not – the Angelos family has run me out of the baseball business, Dan. You wonder why I'm sitting here talking to Fraser Smith this week and why I'm doing Baltimore Positive and why I'm rolling out my Hall of Fame next month. How can I sit here? They've destroyed this part of my business, right? Like, in the same way they've destroyed the city and the same way they've destroyed weekends for those who don't want to mow lawn or might want to go to Ocean City and see Styx this weekend, which I'm going to do. But nobody's staying up late this week in Oakland and Seattle. And when you put it on, then it really is. Even if you love baseball, and I love baseball. Don Moeller and I got into a beef last week out in Catonsville before we did our Baltimore Positive thing out there at State Fair about me not loving baseball anymore. Dennis, baseball was one of the most important things in our lives 25 years ago, right? And we would never have imagined a life where we wouldn't name our child or our pet Brooks or Eddie, right? Or Cal, right? Or Ripken or whatever. And here we are, man. Here we are, and I mean, I got my Free the Bird stuff out. Father's Day, really about my father, and I wrote a book about my father. My father was a big part of me doing Free the Birds, but I've got way more passion for the community than I do for the baseball team. The community will be fine with or without the baseball team. That is my official stance. Now, if the baseball team wants to put an oar in the water and row, great, get in. But this complacency and this... We're going to show a movie after the game and bring in, AA pitching. Boy, oh boy. I mean, I went online to StubHub Sunday morning just to see how much it would have cost on Father's Day. You know, if my kid would want to take me down to the game or whatever, it's still $27 to walk in down there to be a part of it. Yeah.
Wow. It's amazing. You know, I was watching baseball last night while I was waiting for SportsCenter to come on, and it was
so was I.
And yeah, it was. Look, it was a great.
Tell everybody what you found, because you watched golf. You did the same thing I did. The golf ended at 9:15, and you're like, all right, I'm done with this Gary guy. Great.
Yep.
You know, Tommy Two Shoes won. Good. Now we've seen all the Aerials for 2 days because I watched Pebble Beach all weekend too. And then you're like, what else is on? And they started these baseball games an hour earlier, right? So like, they're in the 8th inning at 9:15, right?
You know, I've watched more Dodgers baseball this year than I've watched Orioles baseball. I mean, it's amazing, and it was a good game. And look, if the product is good, we're going to tune in, we're going to watch it, we're going to support it. But if it's not good, it's very difficult to do, particularly this time of the year. You mentioned Ocean City, 2.5 hours of driving, and you were there. There's a lot to do in this area. We found that out when we were 13 years without professional football, much less baseball. So people will figure things out to do. Voids will get filled. It's just a shame that we don't have two vibrant professional franchises, major league franchises in this town. You have one, and the other one, they had a good 5-year run when Buck was here, and now we're down at the bottom. And it's going to take a while for this team to get back up again while we wait for these young players to develop. But look, they've been successful before, and hopefully they'll be successful again. And at some point, we'll start packing the stadium and bring that orange fever back. But they're not making great moves right now. They have an opportunity to reach out in the community, get involved, and get people down to the stadium.
Yeah, what is that all about, then, to you? I mean,
we're not doing that.
You run a car dealership. You sell American cars. You know, you sell them at 0%. Do they call you? I mean, I've asked this. I said this to Bill Cole last week. I'm like, they're at rock bottom. Why wouldn't someone there try to make nice with me with 100,000 followers? Why wouldn't they try to make up with me? Yeah, I mean, I don't get it. You know, like people say to me all the time, you know, I know Peter. I go to church. We can fit. I know John. John's in Nashville with cowboy boots on. You know what I mean? Like they are non-existent as brand ambassadors, right? Like they run Eddie Murray around, they run Cal. Every night there's somebody meeting Brooks or Cal or Eddie at an Oriole game. And I'm thinking to myself, that's wonderful. And Cal sold you a book and he signed it, and it's awesome. And I love these guys too, and they're Hall of Famers, and you'll hear them here at WNST next month. By the way, I found Jim Palmer did a bumper for me. Dennis, back in 1990.
Oh, nice.
I swear to God, I found bumpers from Ronnie Howard from Happy Days, from Jon Stewart from Comedy Central. Alex Rodriguez did a bumper for me. Bill Murray did a bumper for me in 1993. So you're going to hear all this in July, stuff you've never heard, Den. And I think it's wonderful that, you know, Eddie's there and they're paying Eddie, and that's great. That's awesome. What else are you doing to mend fences with businesses here other than having kids run around the field, doing stuff that doesn't cost you anything you probably should have been doing all along, right?
Yeah, you know, and Eddie's a shy introvert like I am until you get to know him, and I don't know if that's the guy you really want as your brand ambassador. I'm glad he's back, and one-on-one I'm sure he's great. Hopefully he's come out of his shell, you know, over space and time. But to get, you got to give, and they're at a point now in time that they can give. They can give away some things just to get people down to the park. If I were them, I would look at volume. How can I get a larger volume of people down to the stadium, whether it's 2 for 1, half price, whatever?
Then there's almost a point where they're embarrassed by it. Do they really want you and Margot to drag the kids and the neighbors down there to watch AA pitchers come in a 13-1? I mean, literally, like, I agree with you, and I agree with you on the face of it, but then inviting people in and having beaten up, dented cars on your lot and trying to sell them with the lights turned, every other light's out and the windows are shot up. And
but you know what?
Is that really the first experience you want for people to have on your lot, you know?
But you know what? If they would call me and say, Dennis, how many employees do you have? 175. Okay. Plus, you know, their spouses, the families, kids. What do we have a Coons Fortnight at the stadium? I mean, there's 3,000 businesses within a 3-mile radius of my store. So, say that again. Say that again. There are 3,000 businesses within a 3-mile radius of my store. 3,000 businesses just up here in Security Boulevard. So if you reach out to each company and say, listen, let me put a package together for you. Let's make it
I got a funny one. Let's do Woodlawn night. Everybody in Woodlawn comes for free tonight.
Seriously. There's a lot of things you can do. We have Social Security Administration, 25,000 employees. We have CMS, which is Medicare, 5,000 employees. Northrop Grumman is up the street. Marriott Properties is across the street. I mean, you can have a Marriott Properties night. I mean, you can have all kind of different nights for these wonderful local businesses, and it's about supporting local businesses. I was talking to somebody yesterday. You know, all the restaurants that I eat at, and I'm sure you do the same thing, Nestor, they're all locally owned. I mean, I take pride in putting my money back into these small businesses, okay? I'm not big on these big chains and, national brands, et cetera. I want to reinvest my money back to the community, which is going to come right back to me.
You know what's interesting? You'd say that. My dear friend Steve DeCastro's own Roost Chris had a friend of mine, dear friend of mine, longtime PR guy in the NFL, was a PR guy for the Houston Oilers. He's coming to town literally this week and for a wedding, and said to me, is there a non-chain steakhouse in Baltimore? I was like, hang on, I do business with Roost Chris. Because it says Roost Chris on it, some people may, you know what I mean? Like, because your car says Ford on it, you think they're out of, or Coons, it says out of town. No.
Sure.
Dennis, I live here. You live here. Steve lives here.
Absolutely.
Local people live here too. So I think there's part of that, but you know how I feel. I'm all about Costas and Pizza John's and Al's and and local and Silver Spring. It's been my business for 30 years. Walmart has put me out of business, not into business. And the same thing would be said on a local level. But the Orioles have such sour relationships, and I thought about this, Dan, and I don't want to get too morbid here today, but it is summer and we got to stretch out and talk about something. But whenever anything happens to Mr. Angelos, what am I to say about it? I am the most public anti-Angelos guy that you can think of, and it sounds so personal and all of this stuff. The bottom line is I've seen what it's done to my city. I know what it's done to my family. I know what it's done to my audience. I know what it's done to my neighborhood. I know what it's done to the community. I know what it's done to the collective mojo, that there's been 25 years of this, and now it's a mess. And the team's in jeopardy. And just like I wrote 13 years ago when I wrote the Free the Birds, and I shared it because I wrote about my father. It was my gift to my father, Free the Birds, to say the Orioles are important. They were a foundational part of my life. But at 50, I mean, in my mind, Dan, I think they're going to leave. I mean, and I am trying to mentally get myself prepared for that because I don't think there's anything you and I are going to do to stop that, right? Like, this is a freight train coming that they're not even out soliciting the businesses at this point. They're still of the mindset of, when we win, you'll all be lining up for tickets. And, boy, that's so last century, man. I mean, that's... The fact that they're not out in front of this right now, and as I said last summer, and I wrote that letter 11 months ago now, are you a Rocky or are you a Bullwinkle? And Rocky was Rocky Wirtz in Chicago, who got out in front of it, did everything differently, didn't live in Nashville, didn't come in by fiat, didn't have COOs they're introducing in August who disappear in April. All of this has happened here while they're going to lose 110 games. And I'm gravely concerned about the future. I really am. On a weekend when the Red Sox come in and beat their brains in again,
Well, it doesn't help that there's another organization, another franchise in this town in the name of the Baltimore Ravens who do things the right way. They reach out in the community. They're hyper successful. But just go back to 2012 when those two organizations couldn't come to terms to have the Ravens home opener here in Baltimore. The Orioles wouldn't accommodate them. They could have done it if they want to. If you want to do something, you get it done. And that right then and there showed me that there was no appetite on the Orioles' part to accommodate, to share, understanding that the old team concept together everyone achieves more. It would have been a great night. Instead, we open up on the road against the Broncos. Peyton Manning goes off for 5 touchdowns, and that game alone set up a bad tone for the season. Had that game been here in Baltimore and the Ravens had won...
Dennis, when you start to line up the crimes, and the mind crimes and the integrity things and the lies, and I wrote the Peter Principles based on all of that, but, man, the thing that you're the most mad about, right, is a simple, sure, we'll play an afternoon game, sure, we want the city to be, sure, we want to be a part of this, you sure we want to say we we got out of the way and contributed to something great
Absolutely.
happening for Baltimore. And
why wouldn't you? Nestor? Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want a synergetic relationship with the baseball team?
Dennis, I couldn't
team in
believe
town?
that people, at my radio station, people in the community took the Orioles side on that. You know what I mean? I still,
Inexcusable. It's
my
inexcusable
jaw
how they
drops
can't-
open at the notion of that,
Right.
and what kind of
What
civic
was-
partner you would be.
There's one question here, Nestor. Here's the question: what was in the best interest for the greater good of the community? That's unquestionable. That you have this wonderful event in this town at this, and they could have figured it out. They could have figured.
There's a lot of things they could have figured out. They could have figured out
Absolutely.
Davey Johnson. They could have figured out Pat Gillick. They could have figured out Larry
Absolutely.
Lucchino. They could have figured out Mike Messina as we're on that. And here we are. It's 2019, and they're saying the old man's gone and he's not around anymore. And we're going to do things differently. Well, rolling out Field of Dreams on Saturday afternoon when you've lost 13-1 and the sun's setting over the city. Yeah. I mean, yeah, these are wonderful ideas. Sure they are. But the idea is, where are you? Where is your leadership? Who's out in front of this? Greg Bader. You know what I mean? Like, come on, man.
And we have two great stadiums there, Nestor. And you would think that with both organizations pushing to pull more people downtown and get more people down there, get more money flowing to the city, right, from the burbs, they would both would stand to benefit from that.
I'm tired of loving them more than they love me, right? I mean, and I think that, you tired of that a long time ago when you stopped writing them a check, right?
Absolutely.
Dennis, I want to just reset. Dennis Koulatsos here. Go ahead. You finish your thought, for sure.
No, they just, to me, again, it makes zero business sense for them not to figure this thing out a long time ago, not just now.
I'm around all summer, John, Lou, Greg. Any of you want to reach out, feel free. I'm still here with 100,000 people following every word we say. We're doing Baltimore Positive. We'll be at Fadley's this week with Mayor Jack Young. Can I ask, this is a good one for you, you being a Baltimore Positive guy as you are. If the mayor's here, what would you say to the mayor? You got any questions for the mayor any thoughts, anything? I mean, other than just the obvious things that I'm going to be talking about, homeless, squeegee boys, violence, the harbor, education, all the things I'm going to be railing about here. But is there anything specific? If Jack came in and said, I'll come back in the office with you, hang out with
and
me.
I've met Jack several times. To me, the number one thing is crime. I mean, I know it's the obvious thing, but until they figure out crime, nothing else will matter. You got to make people feel safe to come downtown, to go out and visit the various establishments and events and venues downtown. So to me, unless they get crime figured out, Nestor, I know Jack wants to talk about with the harbor place, this and the other, but they've got to get their arms around crime and come up with a solid action plan to reduce it. Because unless they do that, I mean, they're not going to move forward.
Well, we're looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to all of my summer chats here for Baltimore Positive. I know you're looking forward to my Hall of Fame month around here, Den. Looking forward to seeing you. Maybe at some point we'll crack a crab or two around here like good Baltimoreans do. Maybe we'll go to minor league baseball. Do you have any interest in that? If I said to you, will you go to Bowie or Frederick one night for a hoot, or no go for you?
No, I would definitely go. Look, at least I see some competitive baseball. At least I have a chance to.
I'm going to think that through, Den. We're going to put together a night this summer, all right?
But it's just amazing that last night you and I were watching a Dodgers game waiting for SportsCenter to start.
That's crazy that we both put that 2-2 game, 8th inning. 50,000 people, everybody wearing blue. Here comes bullpen, $15 million relievers throwing 52-mile-an-hour, dirters, and there's guys on second and third, and one out in the ninth, and you're down a run, and the Cubs are up, and here's Bellinger, and oh my gosh, I mean, big defensive plays, bang play at home plate, right? I mean, a guy committed coming down the line gets thrown out at the plate. It was baseball, it was exciting, right?
Good stuff, absolutely.
I didn't see Larry King behind home plate, so I felt a little cheated.
There you go.
He is Dennis Koulatsos. He won't cheat you. He's out of Coons Florida Security Boulevard. Make sure you get on our WNST tech service all summer long, just like Kid Rock says. 0% financing, too. I see the TV commercials. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook, as well as our YouTube, WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.